Olha, eu queria apresentar para vocês o Rafat Ali, né? Ele é o CEO e o fundador do Skift. Skift é considerada a mais relevante fonte de informação sobre o que acontece no nosso setor. Eles fazem muitas pesquisas, muitas matérias, eles têm realmente um grupo de fontes privilegiadas, presidentes de companhias aéreas, de redes hoteleiras, né? E agora eles estão, em tempos recentes, sendo a fonte mais confiável de informações sobre o impacto, né, do coronavírus no nosso negócio. É um privilégio a gente ter o Rafat Ali aqui com a gente. Rafat, muito obrigado pela tua presença e a bola é com você.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Oscar, and for everybody for walking me through this and the translation. I'll admit I've never done a live translation speaking before, so this is my first time. So I'm gonna try and speak slow. I live in New York. I've been living here for a long time, so I talk fast, very New York-like. But I'm going to try and speak slower than my normal speed. So, Skift, for those of you who don't know, is a business, media, and information company focused on the global business of travel. So, news, research, conferences, marketing services to the travel industry, cut across different sectors in travel, not just focused on one of the subsectors. It covers airlines, airports, hospitality, tourism, cruises, online booking players, tech, travel tech, mobility, and beyond just all the sectors in travel, we also very much focus on travel's place in the larger world. So how does it intersect with different parts of the world, economies, countries, larger issues, geopolitical issues, all of them. And so in a relatively short span of time, which is 8 years for us as a company, we've become the predominant source of news and research on the global travel economy. We are based in New York City, but, and we can talk about this, we decided during this COVID period to become a virtual company from here on. So I think if I speak to you in a year, no longer can I say that we are a New York-based company. And in fact, many of our folks are looking to move out of the city to other places. Somebody in our company is moving today to Denver. Our head of research, Heysha, she's moving from New York City to Denver. So all of that is happening. The shortest way to understand us is we are the Bloomberg of travel. I'm sure all of you have heard of Bloomberg, the giant financial media company. So we are the Bloomberg of the travel sector. For us, much like all of you, the last 3 months have been just the most incredible moments of our lifetimes, and incredible from, not an amazing moment, but incredible from a storytelling perspective. Obviously, we cover the story of the travel industry. I don't think travel industry has ever had so much focus on it in our lifetimes. Unfortunately, in a negative way in terms of the business being shut. But, from our perspective, I think for the first time in our lifetimes, the consequence and the size of our industry is apparent, even if it's in a way where people are not traveling. By the fact that the world is shut, we are learning the consequential nature. We're learning the size, we're learning the influence of the travel industry and the jobs it brings and how it intersects with every part of the world. So if one silver lining that we're bringing out of this, it's that we have a chance to reintroduce travel and travel sectors and travel jobs and the way travel works to the world in ways that potentially were maybe potentially going in the wrong direction before this. Obviously, it was boom time for travel before this, the world over. And there were issues around over tourism. There were issues around flight shaming. I'm sure all of you are following different parts of it. And this is a chance for us to reintroduce a more intentional travel industry, And so that's, that's a big picture of how we're looking at it. So our journalists have been covering this, our journalists and research analysts have been covering this very, very closely for the last 3 months. It's been 24/7. I think for us, the coverage started late January when it first hit China. And as all of you very well know, every micro movement of Chinese travelers is watched very closely by the travel industry. As soon as China started hitting, we started covering the effect. And February, we still thought it was an Asia specific issue. March, we realized obviously, it's coming to US and the world over. And, March was just the most incredible month, I suppose, of our lifetimes that we spend in I would say, a fetal position in many ways. The travel industry, at least in North America and Europe. And as we sit here in June, I think this is a sentiment maybe some of you have, is that we're just beginning to sort of crawl again. There's early signs that the pent-up demand that all of us thought that there was going to be is there. We are seeing early activity on bookings for, the number of people flying is rising across US. In Europe, there's a lot of the countries reopening. In fact, June 15th is the D-Day, as they're saying in Europe, where pretty much all countries will open up to each other, not outside of Europe, but pretty much to each other. I think Portugal is the exception there. And it may change because every day this news is changing. UK and Sweden are still states that nobody wants tourists from. But other than that, they're all opening to each other. And as you know, in Europe, summer travel is huge. It makes up a huge part of their tourism calendar for the year. So there's still hope for European summer. It's all going to be local. In US, it's the same thing. We are seeing bookings on, in fact, Airbnb and vacation rentals, which people initially thought as this was happening would be hurt a lot, are seeing great bookings from now and forward. People want their own space. They want to be able to clean their own space. I know Ricardo and Oscar, maybe you were, I don't know if you were renting or when you were in your vacation homes, was it so I think that type of sentiment is there for everybody, which is, can I go and get in my car and go to a place that I can clean myself, even if they're saying it's clean? And I think that type of summer travel is what we're looking at. International long haul, I think, is dead for a while. There was earnings season in US just in the last few weeks, and pretty much all airline CEOs were saying that airline international recovery will be the slowest. Domestic will be faster, obviously. And that we're looking at a 3 to 5 year cycle of recovery, meaning to go to pre-COVID numbers of passengers, people traveling, revenues. So it's not going to be a V-shaped recovery, which is sort of the economic term for it. We know that. It's not going to be an L-shaped recovery, which is, it's not going to be zero. There is pent-up demand. So it's probably like a lazy L is what we're looking at. I'll take a lazy L. I'll take anything at this point. And so the interesting thing that we're seeing, and this is early evidence from China, the pent-up demand is there, but it'll fill up a certain part. So like 40%. So occupancy of hotels from zero or, minuscule to quickly went up to 30, 40% and it's stabilized there. So I think that's what we'll see in US. That's what we'll see in South America going ahead, which is there's a pent-up demand, but it's a pent-up demand that will only fill a certain hole. And the rest of the hole is a long-term recovery. I think so. Businesses have to learn to survive in a 40% mode. Better than zero, So I think that is what we're expecting. The prices are going to be, we did a story 2 days ago. Everybody's saying there's going to be tons of inventory. Where are the prices going to be? You would assume they're cheap. The early evidence is that there is no evidence today on where the prices are going to be. The general sense is that airline prices are going to be high because it's a less number of routes. They put a lot of planes to ground all around. Won't have as many seats filled in, so the prices will be high on airline flights. But hotel prices will be low. So that's the general sentiment. We don't know yet. This deep dive that we did on pricing didn't really say any trend one way or the other. And so my sense is that the way to spur demand from here, when people are more comfortable traveling, will be less about pricing, more about flexibility. Cancellation policies that historically never had fear of travel clause as a cancellation policy. It has to be some event that happened, right? If you change your mind, that's not a cancellation policy worthy refund to you. That happened over the last few months where many travel brands were forced to give refunds because people changed their minds because they were fearful. I think that type of flexibility will happen. The other evidence that we have is that the booking windows have shortened dramatically. People are making last minute decisions to travel. In China, I saw some number that the booking window for hotels is as low now as 4 days from weeks and weeks prior to that. And so you could imagine people's fears and anxieties at a high, up and down, it comes down, people start to book again. So the window is shortened. So travel brands have to be ready to be flexible with shorter windows. They have to be ready with flexible cancellation policies. They have to be ready with flexible pricing, all this other stuff. So that's what we're seeing. I do think that there was a movement in the last year where ultra long haul was becoming possible, from US to Singapore, from London to Australia. I think that will be, that potential growth is going to be tabled for a while. So from an airline perspective, there's also early evidence that companies that focus on VFR travel, so visiting family and relatives, people have been cooped up in their houses for months and weeks. So companies that have ties into communities that are more heavy into visiting family and relatives. So like JetBlue is an example in US. A lot of traffic to the Caribbean islands because people of Caribbean descent are in US and they're going back to visit their families after being cooped up, and vice versa. And so there's early evidence that VFR travel, my family is in India. I was supposed to go end of March, didn't end up going. As soon as India opens, as soon as I would like to make a visit to go see my mom. So I think things like that is what we're looking at. I'm happy to continue traveling.
Great.
Sorry, I'm happy to continue talking, or you want to have questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Não, assim, na verdade, a gente poderia conversar com você por muito tempo, e da mesma forma como agora eu vou interagir com o Rafa, eu vou encorajar também todos os demais entrevistadores para falarem em português, para que o nosso time de tradutores também converse com o Rafa. Rafa, muito obrigado. A gente vai seguir agora adiante com 5 blocos, 5 entrevistadores. Eu acho que vou passar a palavra aqui para o Ricardo, para ele fazer a apresentação do nosso primeiro entrevistador. Na verdade, a gente imaginou eles como moderadores de uma segunda parte da nossa conversa que a gente vai ter aqui. Ricardo, por favor.
Olha só, a gente acha que todo segmento de distribuição que é vital, né, para todo mundo, tanto para as companhias aéreas, as cruise lines, a hotelaria e as por diante, a distribuição foi ao chão, né? A distribuição foi ao chão. Acho que talvez mais do que essa questão da distribuição, eu queria chamar o grande especialista, o Cássio, né? Cássio é o grande cara de consolidação. Cássio, você quer, por favor?
Oi, Ricardo.
O
Boa
teu
tarde.
o áudio do Ricardo está ruim. Se você não conseguir estabilizar, depois eu assumo aqui, Ricardo. Tudo bem? Cássio, por favor.
Oi.
Cássio.
Boa tarde a todos. Rafa, é um prazer estar aqui com você e poder te dirigir às nossas dúvidas. Uma das coisas que a gente entende é que a diversificação da forma de distribuição que a gente tinha é um dos canais para a gente tentar sobreviver. É muito parecido. Aqui no Brasil, nós estamos falando muito em novo normal. E o novo normal é diversificar. Até então, nós tínhamos nichos, cada um trabalhava o seu nicho de negócio, e a gente entende que eles vão se misturar todos e vai ter uma diversificação maior. Você poderia nos dar ideias de como diversificar na nossa indústria? O que nós podemos fazer para ser criativo, como você foi criando o Skift para nós? O que nós podemos tirar de proveito da sua criatividade e usar no nosso dia a dia? Obrigado.
Thank you, Cassie. That's a very good question. That's a very expensive question. It will cost you a lot of money to get an answer to that question. So I think diversification, you have to look at it in a few ways. And I don't have a specific answer, but I have a more of a generic answer, which is one of the things we've seen in the last 3-4 months is companies that had a certain focus, if their whole business is stopped, they have to pivot into something else. So you would call that diversification, right? Whether it's the tour providers that had to stop, obviously, the tours and moved into virtual tours. Not that that's a huge business for them, but it is a diversification of a continuing relationship with the people that potentially were going to travel with them, maybe had booked something with them, or are buying completely new. In fact, many of our people in our company I've heard from that have signed up for virtual cooking classes that these tour providers have started. Cuban, Moroccan, different food, and have actually enjoyed it a lot. Some of it is one-to-one, so you pay for this instructor on the other end to walk you through cooking. You know, they will send you the list in advance. You're able to buy the ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a creative way of moving from your existing business to others. I've been talking to a lot of group tour folks. That's a tough one. I'm sure many of you are in the group tour business, because the whole point of group tours is to be together. And if you can't do that, I was seeing Abercrombie and Kent, which is a very expensive upscale tour provider. They launched a bunch of new itineraries, but they were all local, meaning within US. Typically Abercrombie Kent, you pay for a very expensive plane ticket, or maybe even private plane. You go to parts of Africa, etc. They're focused on local, which is a new type of tours for them. And so that's diversification. Then, going ahead, diversification from a distribution perspective will be all the things that, we're changing, which is online travel agencies. If you look in US, not that they were losing their influence, but that there was a renewed interest in direct booking. After every crisis, online travel agencies, the pendulum swings back to them because there's a glut of inventory. You need to just push the inventory. So that will happen. The one thing that works in suppliers' favor post this is we all saw the disasters on customer service. People, and it's still going on, right? As you know, like people just trying to reach the the companies and being able to get refunds was just a pain. So it's a lot better to deal directly with the companies than it is to deal with a third party, online travel aggregator, et cetera, et cetera. So as companies restart their marketing, as they restart the direct connection with users is what they should play up more. We will have your back no matter what type marketing. And so, you know, there's a lot, you're talking about creativity. I was looking at Sri Lanka is going to reopen on August 1st. That's what they're saying to international tourists. Sri Lanka is an island. Most of their tourism is people coming in, right, from outside. They're probably the most strict, probably the most extensive way to make people feel safe, which is that you have to, before you board to Sri Lanka, you'll have to, within the last 72 hours, you are supposed to have shown a negative test. When you get there at the airport, 4 to 6 hours, you will get a test result when you get an arrival. Then on the 4th and 5th day, there's a mobile van that's going to come to you and do a test. If you stay beyond 10 days, there's going to be another test. So, and there's contact tracing obviously going on through the contact tracing apps as well. So versus UK, which I don't know if you're following what's happening in the UK, but it's a total disaster of they're doing quarantine, but nobody's following up on the quarantine. And so if things are spreading, they're just spreading. So I think creativity would also mean how rigorous you are in making people feel safe. I don't know if I'm answering your questions, but you were asking about creative solutions. I'm happy to talk more if you think there's any follow-up question there.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafat. Thank you. It's a very good point. Good points in distribution. Oscar, are you there?
Respondeu sim. Muito obrigado, Rafa. Foi prazer. Obrigado.
Pessoal, então, eu queria chamar o Paulo Salvador. Paulo, o Oscar acho que está fora de... Paulo, querido, onde você...
Boa tarde, pessoal. Tá chegando meu áudio aí?
Tudo bem, Paulo? Tá.
Yes.
Tudo bem.
Paulo, você tem uma pergunta para o Rafat?
Sim, é que você está cortando. O Rafat, eu tenho uma pergunta relacionada aos... Boa tarde, Rafat, boa tarde a todos. Eu tenho uma pergunta relacionada aos newcomers, né? Quais serão esses newcomers e de onde eles vão surgir, né? Já que você falou sobre Reintroduce Travel. Lembrando que na crise de 2008 foi quando surgiu o Airbnb, que hoje é considerado o maior fenômeno do turismo dos últimos 10 anos, né? E eu pergunto isso porque a nossa indústria possui muitas, que eu chamo de fissuras, né? Que são problemas a serem resolvidos, porque a nossa indústria é fragmentada, porque faltam processos uniformes que permitam a interoperabilidade, como você falou, da grande bagunça no UK hoje, permitam processos de pagamento, né? E, então, onde é que vão surgir os newcomers?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I was having some trouble with the audio levels, by the way, but I think I understood the question. So the new players, my general sense is the new players will be more business to business than business to consumer. The entrenched players in booking, the entrenched players in hospitality, entrenched players in airline sector, those they have finances to obviously be able to get through this type of crisis. So the scope for innovation, I think, is in the B2B world, which is, I think you mentioned contactless payments. That's the promise that's always been there, not just in travel, but the larger promise. guess what? The largest buzzword, the biggest buzzword today in the travel industry is contactless. We did a story on that. On check-in, there were gimmicks, what I would call gimmicks prior to this on mobile keys or robot concierge or, front of the house tech in hospitality. Bunch of trials, some adoption, not really. But now is a time where you will see a lot of adoption of mobile keys, potential virtual concierge, contactless from the time you book to the time you enter the room, contactless payments, the phone finally becoming the center of all of your payments and tracing and your history and everything else. So I think that's the exciting part as somebody who's in tech and covers this. So there's that part. I think hygiene and cleanliness, the back of the house part, whether it's at airports and airlines or hotels or venues or cruises, etc. We'll see potentially automation come in there. So startups that help at scale. They won't just be in travel. They will be in other sectors as well, like hospitals, obviously, is a prime example. Technology to, for cleaning of hospitals is an easy technology that can come over to hotels or cruises as well, right? So you'll see some, we think there's potential there. Customer service at scale, DIY customer service. So do it yourself, customer service at scale. We've seen the mistakes in customer service in these last few months. Giving people the ability to manage their itinerary, change, cancel, etc., had always been the intent for the travel industry, but the reason they never adopted it because they lost fearing the customer, right? They didn't want to give customer the complete control because if they could, the conventional wisdom is, then there'd be a lot more cancellations because it's so easy to cancel. Well, guess what? We've seen the other side of it. If it's difficult to cancel, look at the mess we ended up in. And if you're transparent about the flexibility and the ease, in fact, there's a chance that people may use you more. That would become a competitive advantage for brands going ahead. So customer service at scale, I think, will be an interesting area also to look at. There have been some consumer startups that have gotten funding that in this period. So a couple of that I can remember, that I can recall, is this company called camper.io. It's a camper, C-A-M-P-E-R. So it's a, I don't know if you know what the equivalent of RV would be in Portuguese. The big recreational vehicle that people rent and you can live and sleep in it. And historically, it's been seen like an outdated mode to travel. Maybe people that are older, or maybe people who have a certain demographic travel, but so it's not very hip and modern. Camper modernizes that. So it's like Uber for RV vehicles. Small, good-looking vehicle. You can rent for $200 a night. It has a bed, it has a shower, and you can order on demand and drop it off anywhere. And so that company just got funding. You can imagine your own space, and you can go.
Nós temos que seguir para a próxima pergunta, certo? Não, peraí. Nós temos que seguir para a próxima pergunta. Desculpe, Rafat.
No worries.
Ótimo.
Ok. Eu gostaria de apresentar, então, nosso terceiro apresentador e uma figura que todo mundo conhece aqui do nosso ambiente, que é o José Alcorta. Ele é responsável pelo Panrotas hoje e é responsável pela toda a parte tecnológica. Na verdade, quando a gente fala em Skift, a gente também fala muito aqui no Brasil, uma referência como o Panrotas procura ser. Zé, por favor, formula a sua pergunta para o Rafat.
Rafat, é uma honra falar com você. Como o Oscar apresentou, a gente tenta ser um pouco parecido com o Skift, mas a gente é mais uma mídia tradicional, então é uma honra estar com você. Parabéns pela iniciativa, Ricardo e Oscar, aí pela oportunidade. Rafat, com relação à comunicação, a gente fez uma pesquisa recente aqui que 55% dos viajantes dizem estar dispostos a não comprar de marcas que não se comportem de maneira responsável na crise. Eles não compram de maneira das marcas. E, ao mesmo tempo, menos de 20% dos respondentes dizem confiar nos fornecedores de turismo para fazer viagem com relação aos seus procedimentos. Ouvindo um pouco da sua história, da sua biografia, uma pessoa super empreendedora, que sempre olhou para a tendência, sempre esteve olhando um pouco mais adiante, queria saber de você, como que essas marcas elas podem se conectar melhor através da comunicação com os seus clientes, não fazendo simplesmente o básico de colocar informação no site ou esse tipo de coisa, mas gerando valor para que toda essa cadeia aumente a confiança.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. That should be a whole course at some university to teach, because obviously there's the travel brands in general. When there's surveys of the top 100 brands in the world, you know, Interbrand has one, Future Brand. These are all list of the top brands in the world from a consumer perspective. Travel really never features in the top 100. Maybe Delta in US features as a thing, but from Marriott, like 2 brands out of 100. And it's obviously a very Western world focused list. So travel brands in general have not had the highest sort of reputations per se, whether it's airlines changing their experience the whole time or decreasing the value of their package, people having worried about refunds and extra fees, and obviously that's always been a case in the travel industry. I think the last 3 months have taught us that communication, early and continuous communication with your stakeholders, and being upfront about the challenges you're facing. The example in US that's there is Delta Airlines has been very good at communicating, especially to their loyalty members, and communicating early and often. CEO himself, I think some of you may have seen Marriott CEO who did this video that became quite popular in the travel industry and outside, on how authentic he was in the challenges that he's facing during these times. And I think that even though CEO videos don't go viral, I think that was probably the only CEO video that went viral, certainly in this part of the world. He's going through his own health issues, so he's dealing with that. Plus, he's obviously dealing with this giant crisis in his company. I've seen more CEOs being out there without their PR teams than I've ever seen in the past, which I think is good. I think that is a way to create that one-to-one connection. I know there's obviously climate change as an issue that travelers care about, that they are starting to make decisions based on that. Things were moving in that direction, and I think it will only accelerate. Yes, for now, all the focus is on coronavirus, but brands that continue to talk about and actually act on a responsible way to travel, an intentional way to travel, the deep local connection. I think if one thing we've learned in this 3 months of lockdown for us, we're just, I think, would be fair to say Brazil is probably a few weeks behind US in terms of the trajectory of the virus. I don't know if that's true or not. But one of the things we've learned in terms of a lockdown is that we're very aware of the 8 to 10 block radius around where we live, the shops that exist, the people that live here, things that are open, things that are closed, things that in a big anonymous city like New York City, we sort of ignored in our day-to-day lives. We're finally relearning our neighborhoods. People understand the value of small businesses. And so companies, larger companies that work with small businesses and show their local roots potentially have a better chance of having more authentic communication with their audience and being able to do that. Obviously in US, there's as you very well know, a lot of protest, and racial justice is the big in front issue right now. So, and coronavirus is colliding with racial justice and call for that. So companies that understand the systemic inequities in the world and respond to it and actually are potentially show an effort to address it, whether, I'll make it up, but like cliched storytelling about the Black American experience versus a more nuanced understanding of it, and showing that and like really making an effort, making sure the partners you're working with are actually Black Americans. So that type of effort, I think, will be appreciated. So, that's just an example. So I think that again, I can keep going on and on that, but those are some of my thoughts.
Ricardo.
Obrigado. Nós temos mais uma pergunta. Eu queria apresentar. Karen, você está aí? Oi, Karen. Karen, você está com o microfone mudo?
She's there. I think she's on mute.
Vamos ver, enquanto Karen, você está aí?
Estou.
Oi, Karen.
Olá, boa tarde.
Deixa eu apresentar a Karen para vocês. A Karen é a fundadora do Career Center, né? Começou como uma grande empresa de outplacement e virou uma grande consultora em recursos humanos. E, além disso, a Karen é a criadora da Wave, né? Que é uma incubadora, inclusive com startups do setor de turismo, né, Karen? É com você, querida.
Obrigada, Ricardo. Obrigada a todos. Obrigada, Rafa. É um prazer estar com todos vocês. E falando um pouco da vida profissional, que é a minha especialidade, né, no mundo VUCA, né, que é o famoso volátil, incerto, complexo e ambíguo, né. Eu gostaria de saber a tua opinião sobre quais são os desafios, né, tanto do C-Level, né, que atua em empresas, quanto dos empresários, né, neste momento, né, tão crítico dos negócios. Em relação à sua carreira, né? Que eu estou falando.
Yeah. For the careers, for the companies today, yes. Certainly a lot of it is business survival today. That's the main challenge for C-level executives. I think C-level, I think I mentioned in my previous answer, which is communication no longer is a thing that your comms team does. You are the chief communication officer as the CEO of your company today. Just that, I think, is very much clear in the last 3 months and everything that's happening since. There's more accountability for CEOs on stock buybacks, on shareholders, et cetera, that the companies, public companies in the US particularly, and even in other parts of the world, pendulum had swung too much towards shareholders versus your stakeholders, which is your employees, the communities you serve, the communities you exist in, what's called stakeholder capitalism. The pendulum is swinging back finally to stakeholder capitalism, which means that CEOs and executives in the travel industry, in fact, we saw this with the bailouts in US for the airlines. There was the bailout money that was given to airlines prohibits them doing any share buybacks, taking any money for themselves out of it. It's primarily focused on making sure that the jobs of the people that work at these companies, at these airlines, survives. So it's a new type of challenge for CEOs where the world is so much aware and watching closely every move. And any misstep can be taken in social media, and you all know what happens from there. So, I would say those are some of the career challenges that you can see. I'm sure you have more specific points that it's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure you have more specific on the career part. But yeah, I think that would be my answer.
All right.
Oh, Ricardo, you're muted.
O Rogério Miranda. Rogério, alô? A última pergunta das 5 que a gente tinha dado vai para o Rogério Miranda. O Rogério Miranda é o CEO, é o cara que tem muito de tecnologia no setor. Com você, Rogério.
Olá, parabéns, Ricardo, parabéns, Oscar, Ney, Rafat, um grande prazer aqui estar aprendendo aqui e tendo um pouquinho de uma visão macro dentro da indústria. E dentro do meu campo, que é a tecnologia, eu queria fazer uma pergunta. A aceleração digital, ela aumentou significativamente no mundo hoje. Como a indústria de viagem observa esse movimento? E os fornecedores hoje de viagem precisa destacar em relação a essa movimentação, ou seja, eu como provedor de viagens, como que eu observo a tecnologia dentro do meu portfólio e o que você observa como tendências aí dentro do mercado global?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, how can your business not be technology these days, right? There's no way not to be a digital company with digital transformation has been accelerated years in the last 3 months. Companies that needed to digitally transform their pricing strategies, their inventory systems, their marketing systems, their customer service systems, all has been accelerated so much more in the last few months. So, companies in the travel industry that help companies transform, big companies like Deloitte and Accenture and McKinsey and IBM type companies are in fact very busy today, because while the travel businesses are hurting, they know this is a time of pause, so they can potentially focus on, I know Accor in Europe has been focused on accelerating their digital transformation in a time where most of those hotels were shut. So, and when we're talking about a pandemic era, contactless world, a lot of it is technology, right? And so, I think the contactless part itself will spur so much technology. Used to be that we said high tech, high touch. That was a phrase that came into existence over the last few years. Meaning there should be tech in your travel experience, but when you want humans, they should be there very hands-on as part of your customer experience. Now the buzz phrase is high tech, low touch, which means yes, high tech, but actually we don't want humans as part of the experience. That's tech's role. In many ways, adoption of tech is a signal to your customer of safety today. If a company doesn't have tech today, it will be perceived as low tech, which means too much manual, which means dangerous probably going ahead, both from a interaction perspective, from a customer service perspective, from a market, everything. And so in many ways, while travel tech spending is probably only happening at the level where large companies can afford it today, a lot of others are obviously, smaller companies are hurting. I think going ahead, travel tech companies that help solve a lot of the issues that we talked about before are the ones that will thrive. So, you know, I don't think tech's adoption will be changed in any way. It's going to be accelerated. So yeah, that's my general answer on that.
Muito bem, Rafat, te agradeço muito. A gente encerrou essa parte agora. A gente vai ter 3 perguntas aqui de membros da nossa audiência, que a gente teve que fazer uma seleção rápida. Eu adianto também que quem fez perguntas, a gente vai selecionar essas perguntas, vai passar mais tarde para você passar talvez alguma contribuição, para que a gente possa colher isso mais tarde. Isso a gente vai colocar no nosso Slack. Eu queria pedir para que a primeira pergunta seja feita. Eu queria pedir para o Alexandre Pinelli, do Morgan Stanley, abrir o microfone e formular rapidamente essa pergunta para que o Rafa possa responder.
Oscar, obrigado aqui pela oportunidade, pelo convite, Ricardo também. A minha pergunta, Rafa, é sobre essa eventualidade de uma nova classe de turista, que é o turista híbrido entre o turista de negócios e o turista de lazer, à medida em que as empresas percebem e até estimulam que seus funcionários trabalhem de forma remota. Então, você começa a ter pessoas que não precisam do local físico, e o conceito de férias também se relativizou, porque, enfim, você agora não precisa estar necessariamente no mesmo local. O quão importante isso pode ser realmente para a indústria de turismo como um todo, esse efeito social, vamos dizer assim.
Yeah, I think that is probably the most fascinating change potentially to happen long term, if it sticks long term. Like even I, as a family, our company I mentioned is based in New York, have lived here for 10 years. I have a son, goes to school here, is 5 years old. But if Skift is now virtual, why should I stay in New York? Why should I not be in London, where my family is and my friends are? And I don't have to stay in London City. It's expensive as hell, but in the outskirts of London. And so I think digital nomads, which was a buzzword, you're right, was a buzzword prior, becomes a real thing, especially for the younger crowd. There are companies like Selena, I don't know if you've heard of, that offer a digital nomad experience, remote here. Those are the types of companies that are startups, maybe they're equivalents in your part of the world as well, that offered working professionals ability to say, spend a month in this city, month in that city. I think those types of arrangements will become real. I don't think it's going to be universal across all types of travelers, but a certain type of company, a certain class of people, a creative class will become, creative tech will become a lot more. I think there's so many more tools and services and startups to be started in helping remote distributed companies. Just, there's a lot, because it's so manual, so much friction today to hire people around the world, to manage them, to be able to comply with laws and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So, and travel industry's role in that will be very interesting. Like co-working, which was a whole separate industry, right, should now be 1000% part of the travel industry, right? If people are able to travel and stay and work, and I saw some headline yesterday, but I didn't get into it, but some hotel company, I don't know where it is transforming their rooms into work offices / rooms. because people are coming and staying long-term. And so I think there's so many fascinating implications, not just for young people, but across the spectrum. And it could benefit not just hotels, but it could benefit vacation rental companies. It could benefit other ecosystem players and ability to, I think business travel and how that recovers will be very interesting. I don't know if business travel, pure business travel, will recover and go back to the same numbers that it was before this. There's some, we're all used to doing this on Zoom now. So I think a certain portion of business travel could potentially be lost forever. A certain portion of the events industry could be lost forever. Certain portion, like it becomes smaller, the giant conferences become smaller, but hybrid tech comes in. So virtual tech like we're using here becomes a lot more integrated into physical events when physical events come back. And I think we're just at the start of seeing this hybridization of offline and online. We're so early in this. And I do have to jump off now, unfortunately, but if I was going to leave with this thing, the hybridization of online and offline is probably the most exciting thing that all of us will be working on, and that we're sitting here in 5 years, there'll be whole new companies that we could have never dreamt of that do this, that we couldn't have envisioned today. 100%. 7-10 years ago, Airbnb didn't exist. Now it's here, right? All types of other companies. Zoom didn't exist. I think Zoom technology, which we think is so high tech today, will look primitive in 3 years from now, completely primitive. And so I think, you know, that's the positive I'll leave you with. I know it's a lot of pain for all of us today. I'm sure all of you had to go through the pains of laying off employees or furloughs or, you know, cutting businesses, shutting down this, shutting down that. We went through that in a small way. But the need for travel is always there. In fact, we're seeing now why people want to do, they just want to do potentially in different ways, like you said, long-term staying in places or digital nomads or visiting families, getting a renewed sense of connection with friends and family, all of that. So I'll leave you with that.
Ok, Rafa, vamos agora fazer ping-pong. Só mais 2 perguntinhas, rapidinho, para a gente poder... Daqui a pouco o nosso pessoal de técnica vai fazer mágica aqui, a gente vai mudar de ambiente. Então, e você também precisa seguir para o seu próximo compromisso. Já está sendo... Dá vontade de conversar com você aqui por horas. E tem sido tudo que você está trazendo aqui de forma concisa e bastante eloquente. É o que eu tenho lido também dentro do Skift. Eu passei a ser um leitor voraz aqui das suas contribuições, tem me ajudado muito. Então, 2 perguntinhas ping-pong. A próxima vai ser para Carla Motti e a última para Ana Donato. Carla, tenta resumir em 20 segundos a sua pergunta que você colocou aqui no chat, que eu achei importante, achamos importante, e depois a Ana para encerrar. Ok? Obrigado.
Boa tarde para todos, é um prazer estar com vocês. Rafa, boa tarde, um prazer te ouvir. Rafa, as questões relacionadas à sustentabilidade, que já eram pauta antes do Covid, como você as vê agora, pós-Covid, relacionadas ao nosso mercado, ao turismo? Queria te ouvir falando um pouco sobre isso. Muito obrigada.
Yeah, I think sustainability has to intersect with many things. Like, for instance, there was a lot of movement towards eliminating plastics, right? That was happening in the hospitality industry before this. Guess what? Now everything is in plastics again because that's what it needs to be to be safe. And so, we're seeing this in our daily lives. So I think, unfortunately, there's going to be a little bit of setback on the eliminating plastics part, potentially. But then it will come back. There's a real, maybe it's only a momentary setback. I think people if local travel becomes how people travel more for the next year or so, from a sustainability perspective, it's a lot better for the environment. It's less less flying happening, et cetera, et cetera. People connecting with their local businesses that are more sustainable. So I think from that perspective, medium to long term, I'm hopeful, even if short term there's a bit of a setback.
Thank you.
Ok. E agora, Ana.
Ok,
Ana
Oscar,
Donato,
Ricardo, estão me ouvindo?
Sim.
Ok.
Tem que falar no canal
Ricardo,
português.
Tá bom. Ricardo, Oscar, em primeiro lugar, parabéns por ter trazido o Rafat para esse encontro. Rafat, eu fui ao seu evento no Skift junto com o Oscar, realmente muito bom, parabéns. E eu queria 2 perguntas rápidas. Qual o futuro do Skift Forum, uma vez que também reúne muitas pessoas? E, por último, se você acredita que o ser humano sairá melhor dessa pandemia?
Thank you for that. So Skift Forum this year is going to be virtual. So the one that you came to, thank you for those kind words, but we are doing it virtually. So all of you are welcome to join there. It'll be a much lower price point as well. And I'm sure I can get a special rate through Oscar and Ricardo to all of you. So you can join, and obviously not just live, but it can be on demand, etc. So we're focusing on making it a virtual experience. We're not using Zoom, but we're looking at a few different tech for that. So that's the status of that in 2021. Hopefully we'll be back, even if even if the pandemic doesn't finish. Maybe there's a hybrid event. Again, that's what I'm excited about, the hybrid events and what that would look like. What was the second part of the question? I forgot.
Se você acredita, Rafat, que as pessoas sairão melhores dessa pandemia, se serão mais solidárias, se vão cuidar mais da natureza, se realmente vão se preocupar mais com o próximo.
Oh, is the world... If only we can get rid of all politicians in the world, right? The world will be a lot better. I think the state of the world is not just, I mean, certainly a lot of it is in our hands, and I'm very, very hopeful of the younger generation. That is the generation. How can we not be hopeful about the young generation? But unfortunately, politicians everywhere in the world don't make you very hopeful. Let's just say that. Pandemic, there was an essay in Financial Times by a famous Indian author. She said, pandemic is a portal. It's up to us to walk through it. The world, there's a pre-pandemic world and there's a post-pandemic world. And it better be a portal, because we need to step on the other side and figure out a better way to live, and for not just our sake, but for generations to come. So depends on the day you ask me. I think I'm not that hopeful today if you ask me, but maybe tomorrow if you ask me, I'll be in a better mood and say I'm a lot more hopeful about humanity. It's just US is such a tinderbox in so many ways today. Many in good ways, but also many in bad ways as well. So I guess it depends on the day and how much hopeful you feel. So I'll have to leave it at that.
Thank you. Obrigado. Muito obrigado, Rafat.
Rafa,
muito
obrigado,
you again.
Rafa.
Bye bye, everyone.
Foi ótimo.